Madam President.
The senator from Oklahoma and
President,
chairman
ask
of
unanimous
the
consent
Senate Armed
that the
Services
quorum-
Committee. Without objection.
Thank you, Madam President. I was disappointed last week when President Trump vetoed the NDAA. This bill has been out there. This will be the 60th year that we've had the NDAA. The NDAA is the National Defense Authorization Act. And I've said so many times, countless times, on the floor of the House and the floor of the Senate, that this is the most important bill that we have. Some people don't agree with that, but I do. That's what we're supposed to be doing here. We're supposed to be defending America. And there's a lot, we're in the most threatened situation we've ever been in. I sometimes look back and think of the good old days of the Cold War, when you had two superpowers out there, and we knew what they had, they knew what we had. Mutual assured destruction meant something at that time. You know, you kill us, we kill you, and everyone's happy. But that's living in the past. But anymore now, with the weaponry that's out there, you can get one outside group that doesn't have any resources at all, and they have the ability to wipe out another country. So it's a real threat that we're up against. I do chair the committee called the Senate Armed Services Committee. And of course, I've been very active in the National Defense Authorization Act every year since 1987. It's a long time. So I'm proud of the conference report that we had, the NDAA right here. Our vote in this Senate was 84-13. Wow, that's you can't find that kind of togetherness in a cause anywhere else. But it puts members of the family, of the military first. And I share the President Trump's frustration about Section 230. And I know that it's a complicated thing. The majority of people in America don't know what that's all about. But Section 230 is something that has nothing to do with the military, nothing at all. The committee that I chair is the Armed Services Committee. That would be found in the jurisdiction of the Judiciary Committee. The Judiciary Committee is chaired by Senator Lindsey Graham. He does a great job chairing that. That's where any kind of reform in Section 230 should come from. And I agree that the president should have the authority to determine troop levels. That's what we have in this bill. We have the president making those decisions. That's why we made sure that the final NDAA gave the president very broad authority in determining troop levels all around. And we've looked at them in Western Europe, in Eastern Europe. We've looked at them in Ethiopia, in Afghanistan, and other places around the world. And so we look at what we've done. And I was going to mention, I've been down here several times talking about the president and what he has done, the great job that he's done for the United States. And I'm going to wind up some comments on a card that I put together. I put this card together back in 2 years ago, talking about the top 10 Trump accomplishments. And I think it's important that people remember that now. You're going to get a lot of people down here forgetting about all the really good things that have happened. And so I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But I'm here today because we have to pass the NDAA. This would be the 60th year in a row that we have the NDAA, and it's necessary to have. It's the most important bill of the year. I've believed this for a long time. You've heard me say it before. I always stand with our troops. Here are a few of the military service members and their families will suffer if we don't enact it for the 60th year. If the NDAA is not passed, more than 200,000 military families will see smaller paychecks in January because the special pays and the bonuses for hazard pay are all a part of this bill. Additionally, it would hurt the areas where the military is having this most serious problem. in a way, it's kind of a mixed bag, because we have, prior to the pandemic coming along, and that was in about March of last year, before that happened, we had the best economy, I could argue, that we've had in my lifetime. And all these things were very, very good. Then, of course, when that happened, everything changed. Now, one of the problems you have when you have such a great economy is that you have a lot of competition. You know, we have to have a military force. That military force has to have resources. They have to have the ability to step in, because we don't know where the next threat's going to come from. And this would, with people with special abilities, and I'm talking about pilots and cyber experts and engineers and doctors, that's where we have a problem. You know, we don't have enough of them. Pilots, I've been an active pilot now for longer than most members here have been alive, and I know that back during the previous administration, the Obama administration, we had a real serious problem, because we were not able to attract the pilots at that time, and because that was when we had a president who, and he wasn't ashamed of it. His top priority was not defending America. That wasn't what he had other priorities. And so consequently, we went through a period of the last 5 years. The last 5 years of his administration were the year 2010 through 2015. And during that time frame, he reduced the funding for the military by 25%. At the same time he did that, China was increasing theirs in that same time frame by 83%. So we have China increasing their military expenditures by 83%. At the same time, we're reducing ours by 25%. And so we had serious problems there. And one of the areas where, when people are cutting the military, that they do it where it won't be as noticeable, was in the flying hours. So we had pilots out there, but they weren't flying the hours that they needed to fly to keep their proficiency up. And consequently, a lot of them left and went to the airlines and went other places, because they were wanting to be flying the hours. And that's one of the things, the problems that we had during that time. So we have the military's ability to recruit and retain service members that are in the shortest supply. And as I mentioned, that would be things like cyber experts and engineers and doctors. So they have the skill sets that need to be done out there. And of course, this president came along and we started rebuilding the military. I always remember being at the White House during a time that we were talking about what we're going to do with the military. And he actually looked over at me and he said, "What do you think we need to do with the military?" I said, "It's going to have to rebuild the military. It's going to cost something like $750 billion before it's over." He said, "That's what we should do. We need to start with that." And this president, with his leadership, took us with a new priority in defending America and building our military, and it happened. So we have the things that will happen that if we don't pass this thing, the education of children for military families. There's a thing called the impact aid. Impact aid comes about when we don't have you don't get the tax base increased with the added enrollment into the schools, the children of military families. So they have impact because they don't pay the taxes. So the impact aid is an amount of money that supplements that to all of it's not just in my state of Oklahoma, but throughout the country. It ensures that children of military families receive a quality education by supplementing the school districts, the budgets where they're required. If the NDAA is not passed, military construction projects. You know, I have one in my state of Oklahoma that is one that would, let's see, where is that? Yeah, we have a thing where we have an ammunition depot, a demolition shop for one, and this is something where we've gone through a lot of BRAC rounds, base realignment and closure commissions, and we have increased the size of our ammunition demolition activities substantially, and we're doing most of it now right there in Oklahoma. Well, this has a new demolition shop in there so we can get rid of a lot of these things we were not able to get rid of. So we have military construction projects in 38 states, and one happens to be in the state of Maine. And it's very significant that they be able to do these projects. If the military constructions don't happen, both an authorization and appropriation. People don't understand this because it's kind of talk around, but in order for something to get done, you have to have it authorized. That's what the committee that I chair does, authorize military projects. Then it has to be appropriated, and the appropriators come along and they put the money in there, and that's how this system works. So the NDAA, if it's not passed, the military won't be able to increase the end strength or the total number of troops in the military services. That's where they're needed to address the growing threats. End strength increases. If it doesn't happen without authorization, you can't appropriate it. So the NDAA, if it should not be passed, the Pentagon loses the ability to quickly and efficiently process security clearance investigations. Right now, there's a backlog because it takes a long time to do this, but this has a streamlining provision in it that's going to make that a lot easier. So we'll be able to get security clearances. All these things are tied into this bill. The OD, if we didn't pass this thing, would lack the authority to pay the non-military personnel on hospital ships. They're the ones who are doing the great job right now with the COVID response. And that's just kind of a snapshot of what we're counting on to support our troops in the field, the bare minimum we need. Without the NDAA, we lose all of that and also lose all of the other policies. Right now is this bill makes China the primary strategic threat. I think we all understand that. We have strategic threats from Russia and China. Last year, we had the European part addressed. This year, the bill that is pending right now that we're going to try to get passed for this year, and I think we will successfully do that, but that's going to be concentrating on the Pacific area. That's China and the things that China is doing that many people don't realize the threat that's out there. Right now, we're up, as I understand it, to 7 different areas where the Chinese are actually creating islands in the South China Sea. This is something that's different than has ever been done before. I've always contended it's still illegal, but they're still doing it. They're doing it, and that's what they are, the effort that they're making there. And if you go into these islands where they're rebuilding, it's almost as if China is preparing for World War III. All of them are, and this is what is happening right now. Right now we know about this solar winds hack, the hack that we're facing. That's something where we have language to deal with that in the Defense Authorization Bill. The new Hunt Forward Authority that allows our cyber operators to do more work to find malicious actors proactively. And this is something that we need to get done for the safety, for the defense of our country. It implements the Cyber Solarium Commission and the recommendations. There are 27 recommendations that they have in this commission. And it establishes a new national cyber director. These are things where it's a moving target. There's a lot of things that we're doing now that we should have been doing before, and it took China and Russia to kind of forge ahead of us, as they did in the previous administration, to remind us that we have these very serious problems. So our troops need the NDAA, and it's our responsibility to make sure that they have the equipment and the training and the resources to complete the mission and return home safely. I'll close with this one reminder. On December the 29th, 1777, 243 years ago today, General George Washington wrote to the Continental Congress imploring that they need to provide the resources his troops needed. He wrote, and this is a quote from that, he said, "I hope that the supplies they will be able to furnish in aid of those which Congress may immediately import themselves, will be equal and competent to every demand. If they do not, I fear, I am satisfied the troops will never be in a situation to answer the public expectation and perform the duties required of them. You know, that's just true today as it was in 1777. So we've got to do that. If we look at the national security wins of this president, I think people don't talk about that as much. We have identified China as the #1 adversary. That was in the NDS, that's the National Defense Survey. It was put together by 12 of the real experts, 6 Republicans, 6 Democrats. It's been the blueprint for our military ever since that time. This is about 3 years ago. And this is what and they identified China as the major threat. $2.5 trillion to rebuild the military. And that's what we were able to get done. Increase the size of the military, replace the obsolete equipment, new investments in future tech. Hypersonics is a good example. Both hypersonics, both Russia and China are ahead of us in that area of hypersonics. It's a new state of the art. The pay raise for the kids. It took out the terrorist leaders. Yeah, how many people remember that? Baghdadi and Soleimani. They were the top terrorists in the world. They're gone now. This president, this administration took care of that. Established a Space Force. You know, when the Space Force, that was the first new force that was established in many, many years. I wasn't real sold on it at first because I thought we were doing a pretty good job, but it wasn't coordinated. It was, you had the different military units doing it, and they weren't really even talking to each other. So that's what we put together. That was this president that provided the leadership in doing that. The widow's tax, everybody remembers that. That was something that had to be done, and we did it. Others talked about it. This president did it. The ISIS caliphate is destroyed. The Abraham Accords, they supported Israel through the security assistance, and we know that that's going on. It's going on today. All these things this president has done, and has done a great job. But I do want to mention, and I think it's worthwhile doing because it's we know what won't happen if we don't pass this bill. We won't get the bonuses necessary. I already mentioned that. Impact aid, I mentioned that. Military construction project authorizations, we would not have that. The full pay for DOD civilians, that has to be done. But that's been talked about by a lot of administrations, but not really done. And then I've finalized this by talking about the China. I mean, this bill supports or helps China. Nothing in the bill helps China in any way at all. There's a group called the American Enterprise Institute. That's a group, it's kind of the conservative conscience of that evaluates programs that come along. They said, and this is a quote, they said, this bill has the most substantial and consequential China-related provisions since the 2000 NDAA. Now, they're talking about this bill, what it does for China, establishes the Pacific deterrence. Well, we talked about the European deterrence last year in the NDAA bill. This is the Pacific deterrence. That's China that we're talking about. It shifts the supply chains away from China in semiconductors, printed circuit boards, pharmaceuticals, and it stimulates the economies in those ways. It brings the malign national security activities into light, so we know what they're doing, who the good guys are and the bad guys are. This supports Taiwan. You know, we've been doing that for a long period of time. This bill accelerates that program, prevents China's intellectual property threat, and I have a whole list here that I'd ask unanimous consent be inserted after my comments this morning.
Without objection.
And so what I'd like to wind up with, if I brought it, I did. 2 years ago, I put this card together. This was when I realized that because the media hates President Trump, people were not aware of what all of the good things that he did in those first couple of years, and people were not aware of it. First of all, on the card, and I'm just going to go ahead and run over these, they're the biggest tax cuts, and you know, we learned a lesson back there during a Democrat administration. John Kennedy said the best way to get more revenue in for the Great Society programs that they're advocating at that time, the best way is to reduce marginal rates, and that will increase revenue. It did. Unfortunately, John Kennedy died before he could reap the benefits that came with that. But it worked. And of course, others followed him, including Presidents Clinton, President Bush, and others, by reducing the rates. That also increased the revenue. But what this president did that was different than the rest of them, he not just increased or decreased the rates, the tax rates, but he also decreased all of the overregulation. How many people know that back during the Obama administration, we had a rule that we're adhering to that said if you are a domestic oil and gas producer in the United States of America and you're in competition with China or somebody else, you had to give them our whole playbook on how we put together our system over here and all the elements. It put us at a disadvantage with our competitors in China. And in energy, you know, just look at I was happy that I used to say that after Obama got out of office, the war on fossil fuels was over for a while. And look at the energy dominance now. We're the global leader in oil and gas production. A 277% growth in crude exports, 132% increase in coal exports, a 52% increase in natural gas exports. These are exports. That's what we're doing now in the United States as a result of the efforts of this president in bringing our economy around. The crackdown on the illegal migration, you know, nobody wanted the wall, they said. Now people realize that's where a lot of the bad people were getting in. We moved the embassy. Every Democrat and Republican president in my memory tried to move the United States Embassy in Israel to Jerusalem. And they all talked about it. They didn't do it, so this president just went ahead and did it. He enacted the infrastructure bill, the WRDA bill, the Water Resource Development Act, the FAA reauthorization. And he had, in the judges that we have, not just Kavanaugh and Gorsuch, but I think our number's up now to about 225 new judges. He repealed the over-regulation of the Dodd-Frank rules. Anyone in business will tell you that that was one of the major things, accomplishments of this president, President Trump. The record employment, but then I would say the one thing, the 10th and last one that I mentioned to everyone who will listen is what he did for the military. We went from the time of dropping down in the last 5 years of the Obama administration by 25%, while China was increasing 83%, now so that we have rebuilt that military. And that's why the NDAA is so significant right now, to make sure that that gets passed and that we are able to have that. And that's what this vote is all about. That's what the NDAA, National Defense Authorization Act, the most important bill of the year. That's why we are doing it, and that's why that's why we're here today during this holiday season. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield the floor and suggest the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.